One day I'm going to create a theme song for this thing, and it's probably going to be Agatha all along if I have anything to say about it. Hello and welcome to another episode of Catt Chatt. My name is that Tomcat or Tomcat, and I am joined by one of my nearest and dearest friends, my sister, the love of my life, the great, the miraculous, the multi-talented Philip Odango. Thank you so much for being on my show tonight, honey.
Yeah, thank you so much, that Tomcat, for having me on your show. I'm like, episode 138 now? It's about time. Yeah, really appreciate it. But this is my birthday month, so this
It
is
is. It is. Wait, you're are you a Taurus?
I am a Taurus. I am on paper, like, true blue Taurus. Everything that you read about Tauruses, that's my biography.
No, the only reason I say that is because a lot of my very good friends are, even my mother, friends, family, all Taurus, all Tauruses. The joke I've made is I'm surrounded by bull.
It's true. Very stubborn people, but very loyal people too.
But I adore you. I adore you so much. You have been cosplaying now for about what, 5 or 6 years?
Actually, a little longer than that, because I think cosplay, when it became pop culture, that's where it kind of really took off because of the visibility and how it kind of became a subculture to becoming pop culture. And so I think even longer than that, I would say probably early 2000s. I was already dressing up in costume, and entertaining myself from there. However, in terms of the professional world, if a more pop culture world, it has been about like 5 or 6 years. Where it became more visible and riding the mainstream of that. Mm-hmm.
And you have sort of you've cultivated an aura of visibility since you, as you mentioned, visibility. You sort of are you're making way for others who are not often in the public eye. You stand for plus size people, you stand for Asian people, you stand for you just stand for all of these different marginalized individuals who don't get the visibility that so many others do. And there's something so magical about your personality. And I don't say that about very many people, but when people look at you, they can't help but smile because you radiate such positive energy.
Oh, I thought that was just because I have a lot of flesh on my bones, but I tend to give off a lot of body heat as well too. But no, thank you for that, Tom. I really do appreciate that. I think what I'd love to use this podcast for is just the understanding that my role in cosplay has really been one and the same, which is to inspire and empower creative self-expression and whatever that means, and to whatever ability and skill levels that might mean. And for me, cosplay has been like a really wonderful way of being able to bring in this intersectionality of what I love, which is meeting people, being able to help others discover within themselves that they have the potential and the capability of doing something, and also being able to put yourself out there and make that leap, right? That failure to start, element that sometimes we get hung up on, or that stage fright, and being able to take that risk, leap of faith, and make it happen. And I think this really stems from having a professional career in business and marketing before coming into cosplay. I was very fortunate enough to have had interest in art and design growing up, which has kind of inspired my kind of diverse tastes and kind of cultural inspirations. But having worked formally and at agencies and marketing agencies as a interactive designer, art director, and eventually a creative director, it really has helped me understand the entertainment industry and what that actually is. And cosplay is a form of that entertainment industry, and it has created a lot of opportunities and pathways for creators to kind of explore what it is within them that they want to discover more and explore, and then eventually, like yourself, create an avenue for bringing communities together, being creatively self-expressive,
Mhm.
and ultimately carve a path, to happiness. And that's been a really wonderful way of utilizing my background in business and creativity and entertainment to kind of get to where I am today.
So I do not know I don't know the origin story to Philip Odango. I only know bits and pieces. And yes, you and I have been friends for many years, but I've always been fascinated by what was it that led you to enter the world of business marketing? What was it that led you to that field?
Sure. So I've always been entrepreneurial in spirit from a young age, and my interests growing up were really to how do I utilize my experience as an immigrant coming into the country and making something for myself. Having been born,
You originally are from the Philippines, yes.
I was born in the Philippines, immigrated to the United States when I was 2 years old, Americanized and naturalized here in the United States. And there's always been this kind of exploration within myself of what can I do to create, enterprises and opportunities for myself that were really hard to come by for a lot of immigrant families. And that's where I really wanted to find and create a world that was filled with design and artistic expression. And having been a very artistic child, it would only become natural to me that later on I would go into the performing arts and be a producer, as a self-funded producer, be
Mm-hmm.
able to create my own shows and visceral experiences. And so my artistic journey into cosplay really started from becoming an independent theater producer, and that started, I would say, around early 2000s. And
Okay.
since then, I've directed and produced over 50 shows and galas and events and conferences. And so within that experience, I've also had the opportunity to work with celebrities and entertainment, and understand the behind the scenes aspect of the
She has
entertainment
an
industry.
IMDb page, ladies and gentlemen. She is branded.
Yeah, you can Google me and I show up on the side of your screen. Um, yeah, I'm also on LinkedIn. So, um,
Me too. I actually just created my own LinkedIn. I
well,
did.
look at
I
you,
did.
professional. She's
Look
a
at
working girl.
she's a working girl now, friends. A working girl indeed.
Yeah. So I definitely, enjoyed my time working at ad agencies and working at in the nonprofit space and PR and marketing. And I realized that this was something that I could augment my cosplay experience with. And it really wasn't until 2017 when my role in a organization, unfortunately, was terminated because of changes and budget cuts and all that. So we're very familiar with that. So that kind of led me to a kind of crossroads of having worked so much in business, up until now, is this an opportunity for me to jump back into another similar role and do the creative direction work that I was doing? Or can I use this time as a sabbatical to really dive into my art and my hobby of cosplay, and what can I make out of it? And that's what I chose to do in 2017 when Maui was born, and the intersection of my marketing experience, my passion of cosplay, and the umbrella of artistic expression really came together and allowed me to propel myself into the industry side of cosplay.
Yeah, Maui was sort of a it was a Trojan horse for you. in a manner of speaking, because it was this beautifully crafted, hand painted piece, and you put so much of yourself into it. And at that point, I think Moana had what just come out. It had been out for about a few months at that point,
Yeah.
and it took off from there. Like Philip Odango became a household name, and everybody knew who Canvas Cosplay was because of that cosplay. And it really is one of, I don't want to say it's one of your more successful cosplays, but it definitely is a successful cosplay that you have cultivated.
Yeah, and it's one that also holds a lot of meaning as someone, from Asian Polynesian descent, of having a parts of culture represented on screen. So it's very, very meaningful to me, and to be able to see a character that looks like me, and also culturally represents a lot of my indigenous roots as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that obvious personal affinity for the character, and also the kind of the creation of the outfit and the character and the performance of Maui, and using that to kind of feed my soul. Was really cream, on top of the Motunui island of cosplay. But leading up to Maui, I've already had kind of a particular glimpses of that with my Doctor
Doctor
Strange
Strange.
cosplay, and having entered this wild west of craftsmanship competition in cosplay, and getting a sense of what that was like on a more elevated level with New York Comic Con, and having placed in the craftsmanship needlework category for that, it kind of gave me a bit more motivation to really want to explore how far can I take this opportunity of which became my cosplay sabbatical, into creating a professional pathway in the industry.
Yeah, you have sort of taken charge of cosplay as a business. And there's the Jessica Negris, there's the Yaya Hans, there's the hello. there's just so much that you have to offer in terms of know-how and how to better market yourself. As a matter of fact, and I, the idiot that I am, I literally have two of your books upstairs in my bookshelf. You have created a what was it? A cosplay professional series, and it was 3 volumes of marketing, of branding, and of what was the third? Sponsorships
Mm-hmm.
and partnerships. How did you sort of find your way into the world of writing books for such a hobby as that, such a business as cosplay?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's a cosplay professional development series.
Thank
and
you.
What I have found through my experiences at conventions and doing panels is that there is a hunger for learning, and there's a hunger for information that almost seems occult or hidden, right? It's like there really wasn't a lot of cosplayers revealing their trade secrets, industry knowledge. There was almost
Yeah.
like a non-spoken gatekeeping, where it was like there was this kind of blessed and anointed group, and then there's everybody else, and somehow in between there's this complex that's developed of cosplay elitism, right? Oh, they're being elitist in cosplay by not sharing the information or not divulging, what it is. So for me, being in a position where I have had significant experiences in the professional business world of working with brands and working with partnerships, sponsors, cause marketing, and understanding what it is that brands and organizations are looking for in terms of building relationships, and also knowing that I've already put in an entire 15-year career in that field. For me, it was a very natural fit of being able to translate what happens in the marketing and PR world into how to build your own brand, discovering the people that you want to reach, and also identifying what are those kind of core values that you have as a person, aligning that with what people want, right? And what it is that your skill sets can help add value to people's lives. Whether it's something, whether entertainment. Some people are wonderful on paper, but just terrible presenters, right? And then there's also the opposite of that. They're just wonderful presenters, but have a hard time articulating, or teaching. And that's where I found within myself that some of my core skill sets, which is to help translate what I know and what I've experienced and wisdom that I've gained within the entertainment industry, within marketing PR, and translating that into just easy to follow guides that help empower kind of self-discovery, self-questioning, and really use mental guided frameworks to help the cosplayer understand, one, the why of what it is that they want to do, and also provide templates of how to do that. So whatever industry you go, sponsorships and marketing, there's going to be tried and true traditional techniques, and so that translated into my work. And so for me, the proof is in the pudding. So I've used my own experiences to kind of cultivate these relationships and create products that reflect that.
That is a wonderful thing to hear.
Yeah.
You
and this is not sponsored by Popeyes at all.
But he's working on it. He
Entirely
is working
not
on
sponsored by Popeyes at all. Although
he's working
my
on
DMs are open.
You told me something that has stuck with me for the longest time, and it is probably one of the greatest pieces of advice I've ever heard. And it is to build a bigger table, not a taller one. And the reason I bring that up is because you had mentioned cosplay elitism. Why do you feel that there is this coveting of secrecy in terms of what it is that you do as a business person? Why do you feel that there are cosplayers that are just like, no, I can't share you my secrets with how I did X, Y, and Z? Do you think it's just exclusively because they'll take the money out of their pockets by doing that?
Well, there's a lot of things that happen when a hobby becomes a job, right? And then when a job becomes a career. And I think, there's often a misconception that you're always going to love your job. It's easy to love your hobby, but it's also much harder when your hobby becomes a source of revenue. And, there's this, kind of wide gap between perception and reality of what it takes to be a working cosplayer, much like it is to be a working performer. Not all actors have wonderful, agents that will find you the work. At the same time, not all cosplayers are going to have access to tools and money and resources or agents to find you the work, book you the gigs. And unfortunately, that often doesn't translate to just the non-professional side. What they see is glitz and glamour and all of this palaces of wonder, but they don't really see how each brick was laid, how the foundations that were laid for that. And what's important to understand is that cosplayer experiences are so diverse; they're not monolithic. There is no the one way to do something, and unfortunately, there are instances when people who are just entering the cosplay, transitioning from hobby into a gig economy position, that they have to do it just this one pathway in order to be successful, however they define that. And so I think it's important to be able to be afforded information. This is where, I explain to people that information is translated into knowledge, but only through lived experiences can knowledge ever become wisdom. And I'm providing an opportunity to kind of shortcut that a bit and then help relay the wisdom that I've gained some of the best practices, some of the failures. I think it's also important to acknowledge that, and some of the kind of like pitfalls and shortcomings of what happens when you take what is a hobby and then turn it into a almost public domain representation of yourself.
Yeah, it's you're trying to cultivate your own way in a way that is conducive to you. Because as you say, there's no one way to be a success. And how does one define success? Do you define success exclusively by follower count? Do you define success by monetary gains? Do you define success as being invited to different conventions? Or like it really depends on one's individual of what success actually is. And it's almost like defining what is perfect. There's really no one way to define perfect, and there's no one perfect example of what success is. It's just what that one person wants to see as a success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is where all of us, there's that joke, right, between shopping for fabric is different from actually sewing a costume. It very much so of like cosplaying and then being a cosplayer for a job, and I think that's where there's a distinction between that, because there are a lot of people who, and I'm reticent to use the word professional cosplayer because there's just so much baggage to unpack.
There's so much baggage in
Yeah,
that phrase.
yeah, there's so much baggage. So I'm saying when people who cosplay as a source of revenue, that becomes a different mindset, which is driven by different incentives and motives. Ultimately, that's a source of revenue, that's your income, that's your living. Whereas cosplaying for fun and the joy of it, sometimes it's very easy to fall out of love with what you're doing when then it becomes a necessary revenue stream. Which is why the idea of building a longer table and not a taller one is important to me as someone who's worked in equity and accessibility and community engagement, is that information should be available. It should be accessible. And and thankfully there are more and more cosplayers who work for a living in cosplay are becoming more vocal and more willing to share what it is that they're experiencing or the wisdom they've gained. And I know I personally benefited from Yaya Han's business of cosplay panels at C2E2 when she first debuted her cosplay fabrics line, and all of the kind of experiences that she had when so many people were coming at her, through the TV show that she was on, and just the phrase that she used was crisis of confidence. Sometimes we have these crises of confidence when we're asking ourselves, what am I doing? Like, is this a good use of my time? Like,
It's
am I
imposter
wasting my
syndrome.
time?
It's
Imposter
100%
syndrome.
imposter
Mhm.
syndrome.
Yeah, and sometimes it's so easy for us to equate success with, like you said, the numbers, the reach, the volume, output. Like, there are people who are feeling some kind of way about, like, well, maybe I should have done more during the pandemic, or maybe I shouldn't have been so lazy, or now I'm behind, and it's like that's where it needs to. I keep bringing up that experiences are different for every cosplayer who works, because it's not going to be all the same. There are going to be industry best practices, absolutely, and that's what I do share within my cosplay professional development books are best practices. If you've never heard of a media kit, here's an example. I am so thrilled that many cosplayers who have purchased my books have benefited from it and are sharing wisdom and knowledge, and now there's just this overflow of cosplayers with media kits, and I'm so thrilled about that, because that a media kit is such a very PR driven, traditional PR driven rooted phrase that has really taken on its form in the last year or so, and it's to help better position that cosplayer to enter the industry as a paid artist.
Yeah, and you advocate for the guests and for cosplayers to be paid. That is something that I know that you have spoken quite extensively about, because
Mhm.
there are some cosplayers that when they are invited to conventions, they're not paid for their there's no guesting fee. There's
Mhm.
no guesting fee paid to them, and there's no money accrued. So I find it interesting that conventions feel they can sort of get away with doing that.
Yeah,
Do you go ahead?
yeah, and I think that's really rooted in the industry of entertainment. It's like the virtual casting couch, if you will, where it's like, it's like, or even like what we call in theater in some areas, sweat equity, right? It's kind of like you have to put your time in, and like you have to go through this rite of passage, or you got to do all these secret rituals in order to be, you enter this, very cachet group of special people. When reality is, if there's a way that I can help bridge the gap between people who have knowledge and people who don't have knowledge, I'm happy to be that tree, and offer whatever fruits of wisdom that can come from that. But I do have to say is that in terms of the industry as a whole, it's not. I don't want to say it's predatory because I think that's also very loaded.
But
But
I do. It is a loaded term, but I have used that term used by
yeah,
some pretty big names in a lot of the entertainment world. So I get
absolutely,
that.
yeah,
I get that.
yeah. In a way it is opportunistic in terms of using people. However, what's important to recognize is that cosplayers are also people. They're also artists, they're artisans, they're craftspeople. They invest a lot of their own money into their education, continued learning, people taking classes, buying my books. There's a lot that goes into adopting this role as a figurehead, whether you're a cosplay celebrity or you're a teacher or panelist or voiceover artist. There is so much that goes into building yourself up into a particular role or position that it is unfortunate that some conventions or the industry might just overlook that altogether because what they want to see is an immediate return on investment. They're like, oh, this person, famous, 2 million followers on TikTok, book them now. You
Yep.
know, but and the irony of this is that those people with millions of followers, with hundreds of thousands of followers, are still coming to me for advice because there's still industry practices that they might not know about or tried and true methods of working with partners and companies and sponsors that it's not always documented. And one of the first things that I did when I transitioned into this working space was to post what I made in my income as a professional cosplayer in the first year that I
Mm-hmm.
made. And that was probably eye opening for a lot of people where they realized that myself as a male cosplayer, this is before, the takeoff of paywalled content. So what I was able to make in, the bread that I was able to make, from this, really wasn't that glamorous. In fact, it was probably below minimum wage. So there's a lot of myths that could be dispelled, from the glitz and glamour. I'm not saying that it's not attainable. What I'm saying is that those instances where you do have very wealthy cosplayers who have built a reputation and products and have found ways to automate that revenue, that is the exception and that's not the norm.
Yeah, I've there's a piece of advice that I was given by one of my vocal coaches. If you're trying to get into the entertainment industry for the glitz and the glamour and the fame, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Get into the industry because it's what you're passionate about, because it's what you want to put out into the world. Don't exclusively do it just because you like having your picture taken. Like, I mean, that's certainly a part of the pie, and I so adore you because in one of your books, not to divulge everything about the books, please, if you can. I cannot stress this enough. Philip's books are a wealth of information. But there was a pie chart that you had created where everything was scored into like different avenues of where you made the most revenue. Some were convention spots, some were commissions that you had done, some were from a day-to-day 9 to 5 job. So you sort of made it realistic. You made cosplay as a business realistic and tangible for people to understand.
Yeah, I think that's where it's the Wizard of Oz, right? What the magic behind the curtain that cosplay when you're just making things for yourself and putting them on yourself and enjoying yourself in the company of friends who enjoy what you're doing, that's wonderful and it brings so much joy. And then when you start thinking about, oh, okay, how can I monetize this, right? Maybe I can make a cosplay that's so amazing that people are going to hire me for their birthday parties, which I've done. Or I'm going to make something so mind blowing, it's going to get, all these likes and clicks and retweets and all of that. When you start going down that avenue, we catch ourselves into a trap of like, I need that next dopamine hit. I need that hit. I need that hit. I need that. I need to be the first, like, 2B or 9, whatever. It's like I need to be the best in what it is. And there's a difference between kind of owning a character and owning your space within, the playing field that you're in. I mean, it's so easy to feel disheartened when you're a cosplayer just starting out and you see like this parade of incredible Harley Quinns, and you're like, oh, I can never be that because I'm brown or I'm fat or I'm poor or whatever it is, or maybe I'm differently abled or I have a difference in the way that I present myself. There might be something where it feels like a personal attack on yourself when you can't do something. And part of what I enjoy talking most about in diversity and inclusion and creating equity, which is what all of this is about, is that there's other ways of thinking about it, going about it, and creating safe spaces for others, making sure that you own your space and you feel comfortable in your space and that you're able to communicate to other people that this is my space. And this translates directly into the world of industrial cosplay, where the machine whirls and twirls, and you have to sometimes stand firm on what it is that you say that your rate is. So if I'm promoting a product or I'm teaching a class or whatever that is, it's so easy to get taken advantage of with this whole this exposure.
Especially if you're new, especially if you're up and coming.
Yeah, like it's so easy to get taken in by all of that, all this attention, all of this. And it's like,
They dangle. What they do is they'll dangle it in front of you, and then they'll take it away before you have an opportunity to like say, "Wait, where's mine?"
Yeah, that, and also maybe you don't have the negotiation skills. Not everyone is a great negotiator. Not everyone knows how to read or write a contract. And so these are just practical business 101 skills that I try to educate and share knowledge and wisdom on, through my panels and my books, is how to better empower yourself as a kind of creative entrepreneur, where you are kind of aware of the shifting landscape of what's happening in your industry, in the industry, and how to better prepare yourself, for the next go around, and how you can empower others as well too. Like, there's no secret that that you can make a lot of money in brand partnerships and sponsorships. I have made quite a success for myself financially with partnerships and sponsorships, and it's all verbatim from how I approach them in my book on those topics. So the secret isn't really a secret. It's industrial knowledge, but you don't necessarily need to go through agencies or PR firms to get that. You can
And
do that for
that's
yourself.
I am fascinated by that because I learned, I think it was you, me, and Lucky Grimm were having a conversation, And we were talking about agencies and how agencies are starting to look at cosplayers, and cosplayers are starting to be managed. Like there are managers and there are agents for cosplayers to be called upon to go to certain conventions and to market themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's you can look at it several ways. You can look at it from talent agencies who scout
Yeah.
cosplayers for whatever reason. So it could be their skill set. It could be that their physical appearance. It could be the type of audiences that they bring in or that they cultivate. It could be a myriad of different things. Also, it's interesting is that it's almost paradoxical to to an entertainment industry that really doesn't like when you have a talent that does many things. They prefer you do
Yeah.
one thing.
Yup.
And it's so paradoxical because cosplay entrepreneurs are multilateral. They have many different talents. The the success to that is being confident in each of those offshoots
Mediums in
of
each of those
yourself,
mediums.
which is why it's often very easy to fall into a trap of being a multi hyphenate but not mastering any of them or not mastering all of them. It's like there becomes this stress of like I have to be everything in order to be successful, and not only that, I have to do everything great and right and perfect, and it's just unnecessary stress in an industry where sometimes the capitalization is how you look.
Yeah. It's no, I you that's exactly it. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's just luck of the draw.
Look at the draw.
Sometimes you'll do something and it'll just rocket you to stardom. And you some people just don't know how to handle that.
Yeah.
Because it's really one of those interesting things where people will do, and I'm speaking specifically about times in which someone will do a crackerjack cosplay, whether it's incredibly creative, whether it's top of the line, all the major fabric brands were used, foam brands, whatever the case would be, and then they start rocketing to stardom, and they don't know what to do with it. They don't know what to do with the amount of followers. They don't know how do I say this? They keep on riding up and up and up and up and up and up and up the roller coaster. And it's like they're not prepared for what's going to happen when there's that downfall.
Mm-hmm.
When
Mm-hmm.
there's that, people are already moving on. Like the greatest example I can use is when Bowsette became a really big trend for a lot of cosplayers to do. And so many people were just so invested in that one look that people were trying to get it done within a matter of minutes. And as soon as it was over, what was the next thing that everyone jumped to? Like, how does one prepare? How do you? I think the question that I'm trying to find and field throughout all of this is how do you prepare yourself for different trends?
Yeah, and I think that comes down to sort of your own personal values as a kind of creator. If you value immediate ROI on a costume that you spent a lot of time and money on, and that return on investment ROI is number of likes, number of followers, income, sponsorships, all of that, then you just have to be honest with yourself on why it is you're doing that. And there's nothing wrong with jumping on a trend. Like we see this in TikTok, learn the latest dance move, do whatever the latest comedy or skit is, and get likes and followers from it. I mean, the one thing that I found interesting as someone who has specialized and grew up with traditional marketing, traditional media, is that social media, when you set yourself up to be a personality or a brand, social media is all advertising, no matter what you do, and no matter how much you say it isn't. Everything is curated to the point because it will get you to whatever it is that you need to. Even food pictures. Like I post, food vibe pictures, but what does it really say? Is that like I can take a break, from cosplay and not take myself seriously.
And
You
get
know.
sponsored by the food brands with which you're eating.
Oh, I mean, like Maybe I'll make like, a bracer out of a Popeyes, cup or whatever.
Great.
You know,
Hey, Arby's. Arby's is
Arby, talk
all
to
about
me,
that.
all about it. So get me up. Um, but I think what is the important piece is that it's like, if anything, be honest with yourself about why you do things, right? So if there's absolutely I have met a lot of wonderful cosplayers who've become friends that have OnlyFans pages, right? Because that is a source of revenue, and
Mhm.
it's very easy to quickly judge someone by what it is that they put online, or say what their job is, right? It's a revenue generation scheme program, and we sometimes forget that the other end of that spectrum is a human being who is looking to live and survive. So, especially in this pandemic, which has shifted a lot of, actually everything online, cosplayers have had to be very creative, and content creators have, like, gone through the roof. All these TikToks are happening. People have, started wonderful careers and opportunities online during the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's great to see this innovation happening. At the same time, it's like, how can we help responsibly advocate for those who might, be preyed upon or might fall into these traps? So how can we help alleviate that?
Yeah. Yes. 100%.
Mhm.
Um Constance asked, "How do you remain relevant?" This is important regardless of the field of employment, which is it's a valid question to ask. And I think I kind of think that we sort of answered that with the idea of how do you follow trends.
Mhm.
And it really boils down to what your main values are.
Mhm.
And that's how I think you stay relevant. You stay relevant by just paying attention to what's going on in the world around you and taking advantage of things that may interest you. Like I'll use myself and I'll use you as an example. Scarlet Witch, Agatha Harkness. We both saw this character. We both saw how fabulous and how batty she was, and we just said we'll make that outfit. We'll make that outfit and we'll do it. And
Mhm.
it's a point of relevancy.
Mhm.
Um, I want to because we have we have about another 20 minutes. I want to ask you about your cinematic approach to cosplay. You have been working very close with an H Media, Brett, and you have been sort of making these videos, these sort of I'm trying to think of what the term is that I'm looking for. Uh,
Cinematics. Yeah.
yeah, the cinematics,
Mhm.
whether it's Agatha, whether it was the video with Tina and oh Lord,
Cat.
Michelle, right? Yes,
Mhm.
Michelle.
Mhm. Oh, Cat Stevens.
Cat.
Mhm.
Thank you, thank you, thank
Mhm.
you. What led you to that?
Sure. What's interesting is that before I got into, cosplay, as I mentioned, been a creative director and worked in ad agency. So I've had motion picture experience. I've had, design websites, design introduction really has been part of my own personal skill sets. And so I think I've been able to lean closely, into those for the production side. But I think in terms of the why behind all of it, I think it is that I enjoy creating experiences and I enjoy creating worlds, exploring worlds. The video that you referenced with Tina and Kat was really a build out of my vision of the world before Narnia and the exploration the of Jadis before she became the White Witch in Narnia, and this mysterious sister that she has, who was also kind of a rival queen witch. And my inspirations for that particularly was to help kind of flesh out not only their stories, but even inject some Filipino culture into it, in the Filipino dress, historical gowns, and also representation of BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color, which include Asian American experiences and cultures. and not just Asian American, but also just Asian, Pan Asian representation as well into a story that was written by a cis white man, over 100 years ago. So for me, it was creating universes that we thought that you know um, may possibly exist. And specifically for the WandaVision Agatha Harkness one, kind of went back again into this world of visual storytelling, creating mystery and intrigue and whimsy, and wrapping that into something that was a very special project. The Agatha Harkness cosplay I created was specifically as a thank you to my friend Sarah Storminger, whom we lovingly call Stormy. She has been a production assistant and many of my cosplay shoots, and working with Brett within H Media, helping assist in those photo shoots. I've worked with her in scope of theater locally, and so she's just been a really wonderful, just person in the theater community, performance community, cosplay community. It was my kind of way of giving back and celebrating who she is, and also helping empower, her visibility also as someone with Latin heritage as well. So again, for me, it's a celebration, and I hope to continue to create, more content like that. And I'm thrilled to see cosplayers like Jedi Amanda, create an incredible Ahsoka Tano cinematic with her latest cosplay. And it's just thrilling to watch people utilize their skill sets and creativity to help, inspire more people. And I want to go back to Connie's point about staying relevant. I
Yes,
think,
please and thank you.
yeah, so I think, it's staying relevant really is rooted in kind of staying true to who you are and to your point of view. Because it's very easy to slip again into this whole, what is popular is what is right, but that's not necessarily always the case for everyone. What is popular may be right for some people. It might not feel right to you, and you shouldn't sacrifice or kind of take away from your own personal interest just because you want to be, relevant, in the here and now. Over the time, the payoff is going to be how you actually felt about the project. There's so many people who, only create costumes to get famous, and there's nothing wrong with that. But once they get there, it's kind of like, okay, well, now
What
I
do you
need
do
that.
now? Like, what do you
What
do
do you
now? Now
now? Yeah,
you need the next hit. You need the next
yeah.
hit.
And so your point of view is now. My point of view is that I need to do what's trending now. The hot 100. Like I need to do what is now. That's the point of view, rather than like the point of view of I want to choose projects that challenge me or throw me outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I kind of started in this is that for me, cosplay has been my protest art. That's been my point of view, very like subversively, because my existence is my personal resistance to the status quo.
Yeah.
And so, opportunities like this, interviewing with you, and having these platforms and creating platforms for myself is an opportunity to create visibility for people like me, however that's defined. And I think that's an important piece for my personal point of view is that I want to use my platforms that are afforded to me and that I create for myself to create visibility and thereby opportunity and thereby inspiration for people who might not necessarily think that this is available to them. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm using this platform to tell those of you who are watching and looking for inspiration is that you can create the world that you want to live in, and that might it might not always be that you can use cosplay as 100% your source of revenue, but maybe it's a part of your revenue. It's not always going to be, just the one thing, or the media mix of different opportunities is a nice thing to have. So you don't put everything into just one basket. And
Mm-hmm.
and again, I also want to acknowledge that the time that we're in right now and the sensitivity amongst just BIPOC communities and the being able to utilize this space to acknowledge that the justice that's being served for the death of George Floyd as well, and how that has impacted really a representation aspect,
To
of
the
cosplay.
just as a point of reference to those who do not know, yes, Derek Chauvin was found guilty on all 3 counts against George Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that was the verdict that was found. He was found guilty.
I'm gonna clap for that. So, um, and the reason I say that it's an important, as a point of relevancy because, because of Black Lives Matter and 28 Days of Black Cosplay, that we're able to really expand the visibility of underserved or underrepresented or even undervalued
Yeah, I
wonderful
was going to say
creators.
underappreciated.
Yeah, Black cosplayers, and now with Stop Asian Hate, which is obviously something that is on my radar. I think this is
Yep.
where we're becoming more and more conscious and being responsible with how we do things. And when we have these conversations in cosplay about race facing and body shaming and body sizing, hair, or things that I'm seeing in the community, like our mutual friend Tranquil Ashes, going through an experience with her current Korra cosplay. We have to be able to utilize our platforms to create equity and to inspire change through conversation and visibility.
Yeah, I think you're doing a marvelous job with that. I really do. I am constantly inspired by all that you do. You are just such a creatively enigmatic person, and everything you do just has that signature Philip Odango quality to it. And I live. I absolutely live for what you do and what you stand for.
I think I appreciate that. I think for at the end of the day, for me, is that I see my work in many ways activism and advocacy, and some of the work that I have been doing, is you don't see it, and I think that's actually how I want to keep it that way. But hopefully, we continue to see in spaces like craftsmanship competitions on a national and international level where we see more and more cosplay crafters be judges, and it's not just a rule of cool. That there's actual truth and passion and knowledge and wisdom that go into craftsmanship competitions, and I think this is going to be an upward trend, and we're going to continue to
Mm-hmm.
see more of that. And also looking forward to when conventions resume, and spaces can gather again, that we have shifted away from this idea that only the select, blessed, rich few can be successful, however they define it, in this industry. That there's a longer table and not a taller one.
I think that's marvelous. I'm actually very excited. To those involved in conventions, my email is that tomcat@gmail.com. You can hit me up anytime you want, please and thank you. But I mean, I joke around with that, but usually and this is something that you could definitely attest to. You have to be your own advocate. You have to be the one to put your best foot forward and reach out to these conventions and say, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm capable of doing. It's the same thing if you're an actor. If you're an actor, if you're a performer, you would go to these casting directors and say, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. This is what I can do. Can you hire me? And then you can start the process of going over contracts, going over wages, going over what it is that you expect to be compensated for, what it is that you expect to be told to do, what are the rules and regulations. How do you, with the last couple of minutes that we have left, how do you prepare for those types of emails?
Absolutely. I think the major thing to keep in mind that it's a marathon and not a sprint. your journey as a cosplayer in this industry is going to be made up of many little sprints, many little wins, and a lot of different losses. There's going to be more no's than yeses, and I think it's healthy to keep that in mind going into this. Um, you know, we're entering this season again when conventions are reaching out and they're looking for new and fresh talent. It's very not it's not that different from the entertainment industry and modeling and scouting. They want to look for fresh new faces, new voices, new points of view. And now is a great time to get yourself prepared by getting your business materials ready, getting your website, getting your presence, your media kit, all those ready. You still have to do the work. The resume isn't going to write itself.
No.
You still have to put in the actual your own equity, just your own sweat equity, do the work. And there's a lot of useful guides and out there that such as my cosmic professional development series. And there's also a lot of great online resources. If you get the opportunity, there is a wonderful group created by Ginny D, GINNYDI, called Cosplay Marketing. And it is a group of cosplayers where they do a review of your profile. If you ask for it, how you can improve it. You can ask for ways to create your kits. I've answered some questions there about how much I've been paid, for certain activities, sponsored activities. So if you're looking for information from within the industry of people who are making cosplay a revenue generating pathway, it's cosplay marketing. The group is a good place to start. And just keep in mind that again, it's there are people who are going to have your best interests at heart. There's going to be people who are always going to try to look out, for you. But the important piece here is to really ask yourself and answer why you want to go down this pathway. And it's we live in a time now in this COVID pandemic situation where we've lived through a lot of self-isolation and also self-reflection. And I think, for a lot of us, maybe our how we view success may have changed, and also what we prioritize may have changed. I've been fortunate enough to be able to continue creating costumes and getting work gigs during this time. But for a lot of people, the creating costume and cosplaying have completely ceased. And as we know, what's happening in the theater industry, not only in New York but across the U.S.
It's been stagnant. It's definitely been stagnant,
and people have left the industry altogether. And we're seeing outcries from the Scott Rudin, what's happening in the predatory circles and things like news is that the industry is changing along with the people, and this is a good time to really ask ourselves, am I really in for this for the reasons that bring me joy? And is this something that I'm going to be able to authentically do without feeling less than, right?
Yeah.
Some people have shifted away from cosplay and spent more time with their families and made families their focus, which is a wonderful thing. Some people have stopped cosplay altogether and just focus on their jobs. There's no wrong way to cosplay, and I think that's where we're back to the aughts of the 2000s, where it's like, I want to get into this because it's something that really speaks to me. It brings me joy, and maybe if I choose to go down the industrial path, it'll be something that can help sustain me as a person.
Well, I adore you. I do. I absolutely adore you. You're such a piece of honest goods. There's just so much kindness and joy that radiates in your soul, and I could speak highly about you all friggin' night. With the last minute and a half that we have, what I want. All right, I want to think of a good question. What do you? I asked this of a couple of people. What do you want to see more of in the cosplay community going forward?
I want to see more accessibility for neurotically different people, differently abled. There's a lot of differences, and this is often worded in different ways. But ableism in cosplay is still very much a thing. There's a lot of people with unseen or different types of
It's
differences.
one of those things where it's like, just because a person isn't in a wheelchair doesn't mean that they're not disabled.
Exactly.
There's still blood disorders, there is still mental
Mhm.
disorders, there is still not mental disorders, mental illnesses. There are still things that can be perceived as being disabled, and there are things that are labeled as being disabled.
Absolutely, and I hope that conventions make their spaces accessible for them. Ramps, captionings, open captioning, audio description, all these accessibility features, some audio sensitivity, all of those neurological sensitivity, all of these aspects when conventions start again, that they take those into consideration and create spaces that are sensitive to that and are just being human and acknowledge that not everyone's going to be the same or will have the same experience. And I want to see that in the industry as a whole, and from a cosplay perspective, that we celebrate more diversity that way as well, and that we make craftsmanship competitions, cosplay competitions accessible to those as well. So just keeping in mind that not everyone can afford all the best things and all of the sponsored goods, for that there's a way to celebrate and make that equitable, for those just starting out and those with differences in their economic, ability, and also just their differences as people. And I think that's a nice start when we start getting back into the new world.
Well, you know what? The last question then: when do you think that's going to start happening? Because I know that there are a lot of conventions trying to open, but even so, I don't. Me personally, and I've said this in a number of episodes, I don't think I'm going to be going to any conventions until at least 2022.
Yeah, I think
Just for my own sanity.
absolutely, and I think that's important to acknowledge that everyone has, different medical, situations, family situations. Not everyone, who knows when some areas are going to go back to school, and that creates, or people are working from home. So there's going to be a lot of these differences, going forward for different types of people. And I think conventions, obviously, their charge is to entertain and to make money off of that entertainment, right? Because so they can become
Yeah,
they
of
remain
course.
viable.
They need to make up the revenue that they lost last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's important to keep in mind is that not everyone is going to be able to have the access to just immediately jump back in, and we shouldn't ostracize people for not being able to do that as well. We're still
Yeah,
going to see a lot more online, opportunities and
definitely.
panels. Things like platforms that like you created like this are going to be continue to be important. Also, just keeping in mind that conventions happen at major centers throughout the world, and not everyone lives in a large metro area. There are many people who, right now, people who are watching this broadcast, who live in isolation, who live out in areas where they don't have a major convention. So, depending on what their COVID situation is in their area, they might not be able to go to a major convention because of whatever factors it is. So I think it's important to just be willfully acknowledge that not everyone is going to have the same access to this. And I don't know, maybe that's going to create some semblance of economic disparity when it comes to cosplay competitions when we resume. Who knows? Is it only the rich who are going to profit, from cosplay competitions because they have access in different ways? Who knows? But I feel that if we keep that in mind and be more thoughtful on how we communicate to cosplayers, to convention goers, that we're creating safe spaces, health wise, but also opportunity wise.
Yeah. Philip, my dear, my love, we are at that point. Where can people find you?
You can find me at Popeyes. You can find me on Instagram at Philip Odango. That's PhilipOdango. You can also find me on my website, canvascosplay.com. and on Facebook at Canvas by Philip Odango. And there's a lot of information that's out there. And thank you, Tom, for making this platform available to not only me but to so many creatives. And I'm really excited to see where your own personal career is going to go as a very creative person, as a voiceover actor. And I'm really excited to see how you're going to take this to the next level. And I hope everyone watching is going to be able to check out all the amazing work that Tom Catt has been producing. And please continue to support. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Oh, Phil, you are easily one of my most favorite people in the universe. Easily one of. I adore you. I thank you so much for being on my show tonight. On the scroll on the bottom, the website, canvascosplay.com, Facebook, Canvas by Philip Odango, Insta, Philip Odango, and you can also find him at Popeyes.
Popeyes. Totally not sponsored. Openly available.
If you want to follow me, you can at that Tom Catt on all forms of social media. I will hopefully by the end of this year have my own website, which will have my drag, my cosplay, my voiceover, just all the stuff. Look out. I have been working endlessly on my Agatha Harkness cosplay. I'm very excited to debut that within the next couple of weeks. I already have a couple of photographers in mind that I want to reach out to who are very close friends of mine. I love them and adore them. Actually, one is family. But yeah, if you want to continue to watch Catt Chatt, you can on YouTube and here on my That Tom Catt channel. And yeah, I will see you guys next week on another episode of Catt Chatt. Ciao me out for now, guys. Mwah.